My name is Barbara McNeil. I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer the end of November 2014. At that time, I saw a surgeon in Chicago who suggested that my plan be that I find an oncologist who would do aggressive chemo for several months, and then after I completed that aggressive chemo, he would do surgery on me and remove the tumors. That surgeon had had a colleague who had a similar situation to mine, and he had lived for 4 years after his surgery, so that was the plan. I found my oncologist and I went to chemotherapy for 6 months, aggressive chemotherapy. At the end of that 6 months, my PET scan showed no activity and my cancer antigen numbers continued to fall almost to the normal range. But when I saw my surgeon again in Chicago that summer, he said that my CAT scan showed that my tumors had spread during chemo across my liver. And he was no longer willing to do surgery. He felt that surgery would shorten my life. My husband and I left his office that day very, very devastated. As time went on that summer, I began to change my mind and feel that it was a blessing that I didn't have that surgery. And in fact, my PET scan continued to be no activity, so my oncologist kept me out of all treatments for the next 6 months. But at the end of that 6 months, the activity came back and my numbers started to rise again. So my oncologist wanted me to do again a different, a little bit less aggressive chemotherapy, 2 chemotherapies. So I started on those, was allergic to one, had to eliminate that, and just stayed on the one. My hair fell out, and at the end of 6 months, again, I began to realize there would be no more 6-month breaks from chemotherapy. I began to realize that I would be doing chemotherapy the rest of my life as long as I lived. And that was a bit discouraging, not to mention that my numbers had continued to rise during that chemotherapy. They rose to the point that the doctor in August of 2016 wanted to put me back on my original, very aggressive chemotherapy. I continued to have faith in God, and for some reason I just felt that my answer was that I would survive this. I had a 1 to 4% chance of survival with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and for some reason I just felt I would survive, but I kept telling the Lord, I don't know how. I don't know how I can possibly survive. I did natural remedies. I continued doing some from the very beginning and started new ones. And I felt that they helped to prolong my life. But I also felt I didn't really know exactly what I should do. For about a year, my family had planned a trip to Disneyland to be held December 2016. That would include our 4 children, their spouses, and our grandchildren. When I started that more aggressive chemo, and I started it very reluctantly with many, many tears, knowing that it was kind of the beginning of the end, or feeling that it might be the beginning of the end. And it did make me very sick. I thought that it was the cumulative effect that chemo has that was making me sick, but didn't realize that it was something else at the time. So I went ahead and started the chemo. I think I did about 5 treatments, and I became very, very ill, to the point that I was slurring my speech. I could hardly wake up. I could hardly climb the stairs in my house. And finally, my husband had to call an ambulance to get me to the emergency room at the hospital. Quickly after I arrived at the emergency room, a diagnosis was made, and I had gone into diabetic ketoacidosis, which is life-threatening. And my life hung in the balance. That was October 2016. I spent a week in the hospital and several weeks after that recovering. During that time, I decided there will be no more chemo. I am finished. I changed course. The course I changed included the Total Health Institute. I made a call to the Total Health Institute, and it did change my life. It's been really kind of a short time, but even 1 month after I started at the Total Health Institute, I had healed enough from my diabetic ketoacidosis and the chemo and the cancer to make that trip to Disneyland with my family. 27 of us, 17 grandchildren, met at Disneyland and enjoyed 3 marvelous days together. I was able to walk from early morning to early evening all through Disneyland and enjoy rides and enjoy my family, all because I had begun to heal. It's only been a few weeks or several weeks since we made that trip, and I continue to heal. I continue to get stronger. I started out at the Total Health Institute with a firm foundation of faith, and I continue with that, and I love that I come here and they remind me not to trust in the world, but to trust in God and put my faith there and to live in the moment and to continue on. I'm grateful for that reminder and for that Christian influence. I am grateful for the program that they have here that has finally taught me how I'm going to do it, how I'm going to survive, how I'm going to be in that 1 to 4% category of people who can survive stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Someone I really respect said, "The Lord is not overly preoccupied with percentages." I am grateful to know that. I am grateful for what I've learned. I am grateful for what I continue to learn and to continue to try and master in the basic steps to health and wellness. I am so grateful. I feel that I now have a future. After my diagnosis of diabetic ketoacidosis, I left the hospital being a type 1 diabetic. The Total Health Institute program has kept me to the point where I hardly need insulin at all. It's been several weeks now since my family made that trip to Disneyland, and I just continue to get stronger. And I made a trip back to my oncologist, who is still monitoring me, and found just recently that my tumor markers, or my cancer antigen numbers, have gone down more than 250 points since I started the program here. That's with no medical treatment, only with the program here at the Total Health Institute. I am so very grateful for that.